All right, I'm here with another episode of the Nailing History podcast. I'm going to turn it over to John, who's going to be running this episode. So, John, go ahead.
Hey, guys. I'm your co-host, John. And you'll be introduced to my other co-host, Matt, who said, I'm here with another episode. So that's always wonderful, really getting the message there. We're a team, and I want that on record. But I don't want any of our listeners thinking that, I've been a guest of the show, because that's some of our
Heaven
feedback.
forbid.
Some of the feedback has been that I've just been kind of a guest based on how Matt's been introducing me into the show. So we're going to try to correct that. And he can't take feedback very well. So he's decided to, throw me under the bus and run a show with very limited resources. He has the soundboard and the mixer, and he can hear all the sound effects and all the bells and whistles and whatnot. So I'm just working here with the microphone and a couple knobs that I can turn. So that being said, let's get into this week's episode. Matt, how you been? What's exciting?
I'm good.
Great.
Just finished watching Open Water 3. Pretty good. I was giving you a little quick plot synopsis. It was pretty good. Recommended.
It sounded is it very historically factual. Where
I don't think it's a historical film. So
no, nothing, not based.
Not
on
everything's
any
historical.
Semi-autobiographical. Okay, cool. That sounds great. I'll have to check it out. So this week on the podcast, we're going to,
what do you think about the, Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole, rap battle that's going on right now?
Doesn't sound like it's very historically grounded. Maybe you can give me a little more feedback on it. Maybe you can change my mind. What's going on with it?
Well, I think the issue is Kendrick Lamar thinks that he is like the best rapper out there, like separate from everybody else, but he always gets lumped into this category with, J. Cole and Drake. So Kendrick Lamar came out with a diss on a track on Future's last album. And Mike Will, I don't know, somebody else. And came after J. Cole and Drake. So then J. Cole on I guess it was Thursday or Friday of this past week, like came out with a surprise mixtape, and the last track on there is called 7 Minute Drill. And he just goes after Kendrick Lamar, saying stuff like, you only come out with one hard verse every 30 months, saying that people are gassing his albums even though they're not that good. I think it's pretty good.
This riff, because I don't even know who J. Cole is.
Do you know who Kendrick Lamar is?
I've heard the name.
So if I were to ask you,
I'm hosting a history podcast.
So if I were to ask you,
my time in previous centuries, not last week.
So if I were to ask you if you would pick between, To Pimp a Butterfly or Forest Hills Drive, which would you pick?
I mean, that's like asking me to choose between John Randolph of Roanoke and John Taylor of Caroline. I mean, it's tough. It's a tough pick.
In any case,
can't make a decision.
There's a mixed reviews on the in the rap community about who is winning the battle right now. Some people think Kendrick, some people think J. Cole. J. Cole had 2 weeks to respond. Kind of sounds like he's just kind of setting it up for a pretty epic rap battle going forward. So, John, you and also our listeners should keep their ears and eyes out for more of that moving forward.
No, I didn't even know rap battles were still a thing. I thought,
well, they're bringing it back. That's the cool part about it, is like it hasn't been, and they're kind of bringing it back. Except for Eminem and Machine Gun Kelly, probably the last mainstream battle to go on from what I know, at least. I'm no expert. Amateur
rap battle enthusiast.
I think Eminem's the best rap battle guy. Tupac's also very good. 50 Cent's pretty good. But this J. Cole one was pretty good. I'm not a fan of the Kendrick Lamar. I don't like Kendrick Lamar that much, and I don't really like his diss. I thought it was kind of meh. But it was mostly the music, like the beat. The production wasn't very good. I didn't really listen to the lyrics because... Well, I did listen to the lyrics. I just didn't think it was... He was like, oh, why the big three when it's only big me? Cool.
Yeah.
It's lame. It's a kind of a lame beef, but I think Kendrick's acted a fool, but
Well, I would think
all
people
respect to
like-
Mr. Lamar. I don't want to be disrespectful and get beat up, but
Well, wasn't there like, I mean, maybe even before rap disses and rap riffs and stuff. I mean, back in like, I'm sure the Rat Pack, you know, I'm sure like Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis and Dean Martin, I'm sure they had beefs with people even back then, you know, probably wasn't as publicized, probably wasn't as in your face, but I'm sure like,
I think they had a lot of beef with the law back in the day, you know, with the
pretty
whole
cool.
being in the mob,
well, that's pretty,
allegedly. It is cool if you're Italian.
yes, quite cool. So interesting. I'll have to keep my eyes and ears peeled as more information on that comes out. But
I like being the co-host. I got to be honest. I don't like running the show.
it's a good feeling, huh? It's
Yeah,
a good feeling. That's
it's
why
easier.
co is a prefix.
I can leave you hanging too.
That you've done that even as the host multiple times. You've walked away from the microphone, left me on the guest. You left your guest on the microphone to fend for himself.
Wait, so you are a guest? I'm confused. You're sending mixed
implied.
feelings.
No,
you're sending
implied
you're
to
sending mixed
people-
signals.
To the average listener who doesn't know, you'd be implying that I was a guest the way you introduced me into the show. All I'm saying. And all my fiance is saying. And all the other listeners who've given any feedback. All right. So, no further ado. We got a great one for you guys this week. What we did was we took a look at a calendar and we said, hey, let's do a this week in history. You know, Wikipedia always.
I bet my bottom dollar John used ChatGPT.
100%. I've got it fired up. Got some real nice for y'all. And yeah, so it's this week in history. Wikipedia always has a great thing, but you can either use ChatGPT, you can bust out an encyclopedia, you can, you know, use Google, all different ways to find out what's happened.
Remember when you got your first computer and there was that encyclopedia software on there? What was that? Was that like Britannica? Britannica? That was fun. They had games.
In the encyclopedia.
Well, it was electronic.
I had a compact Presario.
I had a Hewlett Packard. Was our first like real computer.
I remember it took forever to put in the software updates. We bought it from CompUSA, brought it home, and I feel like it took hours to get it loaded and working.
Dude, I remember playing golf on this Tandy that we had, like the first game computer that we ever had, and we had this golf game, and every shot took about 5 minutes to load, like the graphic. It was crazy.
Was Fuzzy Zeller in that? I remember a golf game in the PC. It was big fat guy Fuzzy Zeller. Was one of the, and Davis Love the Third. So anyway, Matt's purposefully not engaging, but that's fine. I'll drive it. I'll steer. I drive stick shift. No one else. No, not a lot of people still doing that. I be cool under pressure. Cool as a cucumber when need be. So yeah, as I said, we are doing a This Week in History, and not sure exactly when we're going to be releasing this one, but as we're recording, we're just coming off of the week of March 31st to Sunday, March 31st to Saturday, April 6th. So we kind of looked in that time range in that band. And yeah, what we're going to do is we're just going to, we're going to talk about different things that caught our eye, our attention, kind of give you guys a little feedback interest on that. And then we're going to see where this episode goes from there. I got a big one. Matt guessed it. He must have looked at my cards and in my notes.
It's literally the most obvious thing that you would have talked about. So I had to do.
Fitting.
So I made sure
I
to
think
do
that
research
shows that
because
he's gracing our
I
presence.
can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Well,
This is gonna
I
be a
think
good one.
he wants to
Gonna
be
be a big one.
said. Gonna be a big one. Hang tight. I did listen to a hour-long audiobook, a chapter of an audiobook to get ready for it.
Wow, so professional.
Take that for what it's worth. All right. Should we flip a bottle cap? You got your banquet ready to go. Let's do that.
Are you going to drink a beer?
I'm not drinking at the moment. A little personal. Tell if I'm happy to be vulnerable with our listeners. All right. Are you calling it? I think I hear birds. Matt's using sound effects that I can't hear through my own speakers, so that's really nice. Really really nice to do to your co-host or your guest, I should say.
Call it in the air. Banquet or an honest day's work might take days. Unless you use ChatGPT like John. I'll fill that in.
Banquet.
Oop. I just dropped it.
That should count.
Okay. Well, it's not banquet.
All right. You're up.
So I'm going to tell, I get to pick a story. Man, I got a lot to pick from.
You got the date and the year. Any time in history, we kind of kept it pretty open-ended.
Yeah.
What do you got?
I'm just going to start with
Any day, any story,
yeah.
any date.
I know. Well, any date of this week. I just don't know if we're going to get to all of these, so I'm just going to pick. I'm going to pick the one.
Years.
I should pick yours, and then
You can do it.
I'm going to pick April 5th, 1792. Did you get this one, John?
Did not.
George Washington exercises the first presidential veto.
I like that. That's in theme. That's in line with the one I'm going. So that's
Well,
good.
yeah, but it's a better theme. So, do you know about this at all?
I don't.
All right. I did too much research. I mean, granted, Open Water 3 was on in the background while I was doing this, but partly that, partly the national championship game that I lost my shirt on. $14 down the drain, thanks to Iowa. Anyway, it was a good game from what I could tell. I was also spending a lot of time learning about this veto. So it was the second Congress, the first session of the second Congress in 1792. The proposal was H.R. 163. It was an act for an apportionment of representatives among the several states according to the first enumeration. So basically what it was is the seats of the House of Representatives are as Roger Sherman suggested in his Connecticut plan, right? Mm-hmm. It's the seats of the House of Representatives are distributed among the 50 states according to the most recent census. So after each state is assigned one seat in the House, most of the states are apportioned a number of additional seats, which correspond to the share, which is the share of the aggregate population.
Right.
So the original proposal was a total of 120 seats of the House of Representatives, which was determined by dividing the aggregate of the federal census, so like the overall population of the country, by 30,000. Won't get into who was included, who wasn't included. But George had an issue, so the question was, the problem was this 120 representatives dividing by 30,000 left numbers, like they were rounding up. Like from what I understand, they were rounding up for a lot of the states. It happened to be more in the northern states because it wasn't an equal distribution. So in reality, with the division of the 120 seats of the House of Representatives, what Thomas Jefferson argued, so there were four, Washington talked to a couple people to see what he should do about this. And Thomas Jefferson, it was basically Thomas Jefferson versus our boy Al Hamilton. Thomas Jefferson said that technically two ratios were used, it was just over 30,000 for 7 of the states, like one representative for 30,000 people for 7 of the states. But for 8 other states, it was one for every 27,000, which is unconstitutional because the Constitution requires the number of representatives shall not exceed 1 for over 30,000. So it was unconstitutional. Washington came back, said, not going to happen.
So the North would have gotten more people because they would have been basically on fewer people to get each representative.
Right. So that was
the northern states.
That's what they posited. Okay. That was the argument, but really what it comes down to brass tacks is how George Washington, he was worried that it was going to come across as being to side more with the South, especially being from the South himself. But he did it anyway because he felt that the fact that it didn't follow Article 1, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution is it was the most important thing. So he did veto it. It was sustained in the House. It didn't get the 2/3 of the vote required. And yeah, so then on April 10th, they proposed a new apportionment, and that ratio ended up being 1 for every 33,000 persons. And it turned out to be the number of representatives went from 120 to 105. And then that passed through Washington passed that. So I went through all this math. This is how ridiculous this is. So like I was trying to figure out what's that?
You crunched the math, crunched the numbers.
I crunched the numbers because I was like, I don't understand like why this is such a big deal. Like I get this, and then like who was really like, what was the intent? And like, they were really being that smart and like, oh, we're going to give this. So I won't. I went to every state and went through what the first proposal was, what the second proposal was, the percentages and everything. And I'll just say this much: it went from 120 representatives to 105. And I'll just split it up from the North and the South. I won't split it up state by state. But the North, which includes New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Vermont, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Maryland, they went from having 76 representatives, or 63.3% of the House, to 66 representatives, or 62.9% of the House. And the South, which is Virginia, Kentucky, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia, went from 44 representatives, or 36.7% of the House, to 39 representatives, or 37.1% of the House. So really, the North got 0.4% less of the House representation, and the South got 0.4% more. So we were talking about, from how I look at it, is 0.4% representation if you split it up into North and South. That's what all that was about.
Dang, that is quite the number crunch.
I could go through every state if you want.
No, I think that's but so I know in my reading, I didn't know the details of that veto, but I do know, and I had read that, yeah, the 30,000 to 1 was seen as we can't go beyond that. You can't have representative government if you go beyond a 30,000 to 1 ratio.
So the argument was to find something that was equal. That there weren't, like, I think to get the least amount of like rounding up, rounding down for the states.
Right. But it seems all like a moot. I guess we could maybe tie that into today. It's kind of a moot point, right? I mean, what's the average? I think.
Well, they capped it then. They capped it then, no?
I don't believe it's capped. I think in California, I mean, they capped the total number of representatives at 435.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, they capped that. So now you're only getting an increase in population. So now what's the average?
Because it used to be that obviously that number of representation would change, but then they stopped that. And now it just changes from state to state, I guess.
Well, and they gerrymander and they cut up districts, but yeah, you're still locked into that 435. But at the end of the day, I mean, we're nowhere near a 30,000. We're nowhere near even 100,000 per representative if you took the whole country. I think the average is 750,000 people per representative in the House of Representatives. So I think George would be aghast at that. I think all of the founders would make their head spin seeing that number.
But I think the issue that they had is they didn't want more, so they wanted it lower. They didn't want to have more. Like they didn't want to side with the people for it to be less than 1 to every 30,000. So with the more, I don't know if he would really care so much. Then it was more just for fairness
for each state.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you don't want the states to one section over the other. That goes back to the very beginning. But I would think that they would have been fine with it. Just as you get more people, as you increase your population, you would want to keep a ratio of 30,000 to 1 at most. Like no matter what, I mean, if you have to have a bigger house, Capitol building to house all these people. If you've got 800 represented, maybe 800 represented.
But I think it was more of a maximum than a minimum.
So they would have rather just said, well, we don't want to have any more than 435 people representing the entire populace, no matter whether it's 1 billion people, 300 million people, or 50 million people.
They were concerned that some of the states were getting an extra representative, and there were too many representatives per population. That was the whole thing.
Okay.
So some states were getting extra, and that's what they're concerned. There was 8 states that got one more, and I guess it was like a rounding thing. So,
okay, interesting.
Well, I thought that was cool because that's a pretty Yeah, you like that?
Veto. I do. So basically, that's a great segue into the one I found. And so I think, long story short, George Washington was doing his best. He was the very first president to defend and uphold the Constitution per his oath. And that is certainly what this individual that I'm about to mention did as well.
Some could argue that.
Okay, well, we can get into that, but let me just kind of stay my part here. So, on April 6th of 1841, the 10th president of the United States, Mr. John Tyler of Virginia, was sworn in to be the 10th president of the United States following the death of President William Henry Harrison.
Not if he has John Quincy Adams.
Well, I don't believe a word that guy says, so that's fine.
Just saying. He's a son of a founding father. I'd listen to him.
Like his dad. He's just got his own thing. So, yeah, a lot of people. So, a little background there. So, William Henry Harrison was really old. He was
68 years old. I can't believe it. Or whatever.
He was old, and he was basically just like
which is young now.
But back then, he was counting his days. But I mean,
barely.
He gave like some super long speech in really poor weather, came down with a pneumonia and died like a month into office. And so then John Tyler assumed the presidency. But people didn't know this was the very first time a sitting president had died. So they were, people were trying to find their ways. And at this time, I mean, it was a little heated between the Whigs and the Democrats. You're already this is, only a few years after Andrew Jackson, who kind of got a lot of people's panties in a bunch. The Whig Party was basically created to fight King Andrew. And so people like John Quincy Adams or Henry Clays, they would have very much been against having a John Tyler, who was an OG states' rights Whig. He was a Virginia gentleman planter. Very long history, family, going back centuries. His father was a beast. He supped with Thomas Jefferson when he was a boy. So he
slept with him?
Suppered, dined with Thomas Jefferson. And he was cut from the cloth of a Virginian. Yeah, states' rights Virginian, and did not get on with the Northern Whigs, who wanted a nationalist agenda by the time 1840 comes around, who wanted
although he joined them.
Internal improvements.
He ran as a Whig, the Whig Party.
Back then, when you were oftentimes picked as a vice president, that didn't really mean anything. It was just kind of a reason to get votes. So the Whigs were, doing whatever they had to do to get elected. And so William Henry Harrison was a former war hero from the War of 1812. So he just, had that recognition. And then John Tyler, they wanted to be able to lock in some of that Southern vote. And so he represented the states' right arm of that. So they only won in large part because of that. They also had some pretty sweet slogans like Tippecanoe and Tyler too. Some say it was the very first modern election or modern campaign. And so, yeah, he comes into office, and as I might have mentioned before in previous episodes, he is my favorite president. He's also a bobblehead that Matt owns and is staring him in the face right now for good reason. I would say more than any other president, he did more to defend and uphold the Constitution per his oath. And now, it requires you to, one, read the Constitution and understand originalism and what it actually entails. And so, but no matter what you do, and whether you're the president or you're in Congress or you're in the Supreme Court, you're not just checking the other branches of power. You're not just checking their power. You all have one common goal in mind, is the Constitution. And if any of those three are acting unconstitutionally, it is your duty and responsibility to defend and uphold it. And so if any what you could have bad policy come across your desk, but if you sign off on unconstitutional legislation, even if it's popular, it's a no-no. And so John Tyler was not out to win any popularity contests. Neither were Grover Cleveland, Thomas Jefferson to a point, maybe by the second term, not so much. Calvin Coolidge. I mean, these guys put the Constitution, before everything else. And John Tyler, but he's a beast. So he's also.
I have written here, if Mount Rushmore for America's most unpopular presidents is ever created, John Tyler would be a leading candidate to have his likeness carved in the stone.
I don't think he would be aghast against that.
Everybody hated him. Big time. Big time.
Are you speaking in current historical terms? Well, he was seen as a traitor to his party.
Well, they burned an effigy of him at the White House. They hated him.
Well, he said it's right to be
dude. He got into the presidency, and then he was like, "I don't care what William Henry Harrison was thinking of doing. No. I'm not him. I'm not him. I'm not an acting president. I'm not going to carry out his agenda. I'm doing whatever I want to do." The voters must have been pumped.
It wasn't William Henry Harrison. He was a face. Henry Clay ran the party. He was a senator at the time from Kentucky, and he was a perpetual runner for president, never won. He was a politician to the core. People love him in Pottsville, Pennsylvania. If anyone ever up there, there's a statue of him, which is fitting because Pennsylvania also loved tariffs. So if you look for protective tariffs and corporate welfare, then Henry Clay's your guy. Shout out to any libertarian.
I'm sure the First National Bank wasn't a big fan of Henry Clay. Or was a big fan of Henry Clay. No, he loved
it. So Henry Clay came out with what was called the American System. He wanted to appease everybody. He was a politician. He wanted to appease the West. He wanted to appease Northern capitalists. He wanted to appease Western farmers with federally funded internal improvements. He wanted to appease the North with protective tariffs and manufacturing. And he wanted to, usually left the South holding the bag and just being the ones who told him off because he was doing unconstitutional nonsense. But there were some Whigs that had supported his agenda. But you're right. He was not popular. John Tyler was not very liked.
After Tyler twice voted Clay's bill to reestablish a national bank, supporters of the senator, vetoed John. That's what I said, right?
Yeah, but my question to you is...
After Tyler twice vetoed Clay's bill to reestablish a national bank, supporters of the senator forced open the White House gates, hurled stones at the presidential mansion, and shouted, "Groans for the traitor." They hanged the president's effigy and then burned it on the White House porch for good measure.
He basically...
Talk about an insurrection.
I mean, he could have taken the modern Democratic edge and be like, he could have had his own witch hunt after that and have to use the arm of the state to, what it would have been more limited than it is today. But he could have gone after them, but he was cool. He was like, all right, you don't like me, but I'm not here to be your popular president. I'm here to defend and uphold the Constitution per my oath. He wasn't out to win a popularity contest. They don't make people like him like they used to. Guy had 15 kids as well. His grandson's still alive. So he's got something good in his genes. But I actually, in preparation for this, so he was kicked out of his own party. So another cool thing with John Tyler, he was the only president to be sitting for most of his term without a political party.
And his cabinet all quit.
Well, because they were basically hand-picked, hand-selected by Henry Clay and the Whigs. You had Daniel Webster said he'd hang on for a little bit, but he eventually left. But everyone, they basically wanted to embarrass the guy. Henry Clay wanted him out. Wanted to embarrass him. He basically told everyone in his cabinet to resign. We're going to make this guy look like an idiot. And he's like, you do whatever you want. I'm not going. I'm going to do my duty. And so he hired his people. Abel Upshur became his Secretary of State. Basically helped, start getting the ball rolling on the annexation of Texas and some other things. And he basically told Henry Clay to go kick rocks, which I think is awesome. The guy's a bozo. And so in preparation for this little number, I asked ChatGPT.
Well, do you have anything about the
exchange?
Do you have anything
between the two?
Do you have anything about the cruise down the Potomac that he was involved in?
The one that blew up?
Yeah.
The ship? No, I know Abel Upshur died on that. Yeah, it was like a whole freaking boat. That
So he was on a cruise like right after the USS Princeton was what do you call it when a boat is like set sail? I forget. Anyway, new boat. He had narrowly escaped death when the ship's quote unquote state of the art cannon called the Peacemaker exploded when the crew fired a celebratory salute, killing 7 people on board, including 2 members of Tyler's cabinet and his future wife's father.
Yikes.
I mean, this guy is just a buffoon. It sounds like,
how is that
it's just funny. And then this is my favorite part. This is my favorite
reading this stuff.
This is my favorite thing that I read about him. I mean, I added that he's a buffoon. That's just my own opinion.
Well, of course.
But my favorite part about him is Tyler's unexpected ascendance to the presidency and the near miss aboard the Princeton earned him the nickname of his accidency. Oh, I love it. And like, I gotta admit, I think that's hilarious. It's so funny, but I have the nickname of the Mistaker among some of my friends up here. So I can feel with them, like his accidency, the Mistaker. I can kind of feel his pain on that.
Yeah, Henry Clay. Again, Henry Clay referred to him as his accidency. Unexpected rise to the presidency. But also, I
just think it's funny that they were like, "Oh, we're going to give this guy a salute." The cannon blows up. What a buffoon! Oh, this is your favorite president? One termer.
He's the best.
Dropped out of the race, right? Dropped out of his second term.
Well, he committed. I mean, you can't go against Henry Clay that many times without having it. He knew that his vetoes would, probably cost him his political career. I mean, at this point, clearly it's impacted you. And
on his last
160 or 180 years on, you still think he's a bozo because of a cannon going off. So
on his
hit job clearly worked. So.
On his last full day as president, Congress gave him one final rebuke by passing the first override of a presidential veto in American history. What a loser. Oh, boy.
Well, I don't think I really wonder. It's funny because you picked George Washington, but I really wonder if he'd be laughing as much at what Henry Clay was doing. I really wonder. Oh, well.
Oh, I cracked myself up. Well, all right, what do you have prepped here? Sorry. I think that's all. Those are the only notes that I have for
so
him.
You knew I was going to say it, so you probably already knew this was going to be the one I went with.
Well, I had, once I saw that was last week or whatever week we're doing, I'm like, I got to get some facts going because it was so good.
All right. You're from Pennsylvania. You are truly Pennsylvanian. I mean, Henry Clay, I think he did very well in Pennsylvania. He gave them their tariff, protected their manufacturing and industry. So I understand you're a Pennsylvanian through and through. I get it. But so here, I asked ChatGPT to give me a brief interaction. So I think this might convey some of the heatedness, and they actually did a good job of making John Tyler look like a boss, in my opinion.
Can I read somebody's?
Yeah, you want to be? Who do you want to be? Here, I'll send it to you in the chat. All right, who do you want to be? John Tyler, Henry Clay.
I'll be John Tyler.
Okay, fine. Do it.
I can't see it. I can't see your screen.
You can't?
Oh, wait. Yeah, okay. You got to zoom in.
Okay. Well, for context, ChatGPT says, while there is no historical record of a specific conversation between John Tyler and Henry Clay, we can imagine a hypothetical exchange based on their own disagreements and personalities. Take it away, John.
Gee, Senator Clay, I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me today.
Mr. President.
I can't. Just start. You can do John Tyler. I'll be Henry Clay.
Senator Clay, I appreciate you taking the time to meet with me today.
Mr. President, the pleasure is all mine. Though I must admit, I wish we were meeting under better circumstances.
Indeed, Senator. Our recent disagreements have caused quite a stir, haven't they?
They certainly have, Mr. President. I must say, your recent vetoes sure have left many of us perplexed. We had hoped for cooperation, not obstruction.
I understand your frustration, Senator, but you must see that I cannot in good conscience support a bill that I believe goes against the principles of our Constitution.
But, Mr. President, the bank is essential for the stability of our economy. Surely you can see the benefits it would bring.
I see your point, Senator, but I fear the consolidation of power in such an institution. We must tread carefully to preserve the balance of power.
Balance,
and liberty.
Mr. President, is exclusively what we are trying to achieve. If we do not act decisively, we risk economic turmoil, just like what's going to happen in 1929 in this country.
I appreciate your concern for the country, Senator. Rest assured, I will consider all perspectives before making any decisions.
That is all we ask, Mr. President, but time is of the essence. I hope we can find common ground for the good of the nation.
As do I, Senator. As do I. Oh, that wasn't the heated one. Crap.
Oh, my God. I was going to say that wasn't fun at all.
No, I asked it to be more intense. Oh, it's like Wig Lackeys. No, this one's way better. Yeah. Well, oops. But we can edit it.
All right, let's do it again.
All right, fans. Here we go again. All right. Maybe I'll try to pep up a little more. I'm just going to do it in my voice because why not? Senator Clay, I didn't expect you here after your recent attempts to undermine my presidency.
Mr. President, your reckless vetoes have thrown our entire agenda into disarray. Do you have any idea the damage you're causing?
Damage? Only damage I see is the one you and your cronies are trying to inflict on the Constitution with your
unconstitutional. You've clearly lost touch with reality, Tyler. The bank is vital for our economic stability, and your obstinance is putting the nation at risk.
Stand idly by while you and your Whig lackeys trample over the principles of limited government and states' rights. I was elected to uphold the Constitution, not to bow to your nonsense demands.
Listen, you were elected as vice president, Tyler, not as some rogue dictator. You've betrayed the very party that put you in power. You're nothing but a traitor.
Traitor? Ha! The only traitors here are those who abandon their principles for political expediency. If anyone's a traitor, it's you and your backstabbing Whigs who kicked me out of the party.
You were expelled from the party because you suck. You abandoned our values, Tyler. You've isolated yourself, and now you'll face the consequences of your actions, which will probably be something like a cannon exploding while you're on the ship of the Princeton.
I'd rather face the consequences than betray the trust of the American people. Unlike you, Clay, I won't compromise my principles for power. Crossed arms. Rap style.
Okay, his accidency.
So John Tyler's for the Constitution. Henry Clay's saying you gypped our party. That's basically it. Yeah, you put the country and Constitution before party. Well, there you go. We live in Henry Clay.
I'm going to put a poll out there to see who did a better job acting.
Well, that's fine. You do that. I've said my piece. He's my favorite president. We're actually fans I'll let our fans know. I'll say this. I've asked Matt actually to be best man at my wedding. And so as part of his best man duties, I'm also putting on a bachelor party. And I specifically said that I would love to go to John Tyler's house.
Sure, you specifically said you didn't want one.
I just want to go there. If you said you got me tickets to go to John Tyler's house, Sherwood Forest, for anyone who's interested, in Tidewater, Virginia, not too far of a drive from Williamsburg, I'd be more than happy. And I kind of want to get there before his grandson dies, because it could happen literally any day.
Does his grandson still live there?
I don't think he lives there, but the family still owns it. And I think he is still involved with some way, shape, or form. So, yeah. I mean, yeah, people think he's a bozo. I understand that. But how are you grading your presidents? If you grade your presidents based on how they break the Constitution, well, then, yeah, he's not good. Then you stick with FDR and Woodrow Wilson and Richard Nixon and everyone after 1945, really. So there you go. On this April 6th, 1841, big day.
I'll never forget.
Shouldn't.
All right. I guess we got it's 41 minutes in. I guess we got a little bit of time for another one each.
All right. I got a good one. April 6th, 1862.
Wow, another day, same day.
I like that day. It's a big day. Battle of Shiloh, American Civil War. Fought in southwestern Tennessee. It was the bloodiest battle, one of the bloodiest battles of the war up to that point. Confederate forces were led by Albert Sidney Johnston, who was a fun fact about him. He fought for 3 different armies. He fought for the Confederate Army. He fought for the U.S. Army, the Confederate Army, and the Texas Army when Texas was its own country. They lost a surprise attack on Union forces, commanded by General Ulysses S. Grant near Shiloh Church. Caught off guard. Union forces ultimately repelled the Confederate advance, securing a costly victory. The battle demonstrated the ferocity and scale of the Civil War combat and highlighted the importance of preparedness and resilience on the battlefield. Yes, that came from ChatGPT, but it is a very interesting battle, and I will say there's a lot more you can read about it. Shelby Foote wrote a book on Shiloh before he went out and came out with the Civil War narrative, which is a 3-part volume, which I highly recommend. And super interesting. And actually, while reading the Shelby Foote's book, he talks about Shiloh in detail. So there's a scene where Confederate general by the name of Nathan Bedford Forrest separated. I think he might have been a colonel at the time. Anyway, cavalry. He was a part of the Confederate cavalry leader who got separated from his troops in Shiloh, ended up surrounded by a bunch of Union troops. And basically this guy did like the most badass act of the war. So he basically picked up a Union infantryman, pulled him up onto his horse. And before he did that, he got shot. A bullet got lodged in his spine. So he's on horseback, bullet in his spine, separated from his troops, surrounded by Union soldiers. He jacks one of these Union infantrymen, picks him up on the saddle, and basically uses him as a human bullet shield, and basically runs out of there and manages to reconvene with his troops. I'm a Civil War buff. Matt can't leave the 1700s. I'm happy to talk about more. I'm happy to not give you just the bookends of the 1700s and the 1900s, which my co-host is very happy to do. But he just skips over the 1800s like they never happened. Considering that's where most of the all the centralized power and all the power grabbing happened. But never mind. Anyway, I asked ChatGPT to give me a story. I wanted to reenact the scene for our listeners. So I asked ChatGPT to convey the story of Nathaniel Bedford Forrest at Shiloh. So anyway, I have a thing written out here in the voice of Al Pacino from Scarface. I don't know if you wanted me to read it. We don't have to do it.
Yeah, read it.
All right. So check this out.
I do love your Scarface, man. It's good.
Before Bedford Forrest pulls off that crazy move with the Union soldier at Shiloh, he's already been through some serious stuff. See, earlier in the battle, Forrest is leading his men into the fray, charging ahead like a madman like me, Tony Montana. But then, out of nowhere, bam, a bullet comes whizzing past, hitting Forrest square in the back. Now, most guys would drop like a sack of potatoes, right? But not Forrest. Nah, he's made of tougher stuff. Big cojones. The bullet, it doesn't kill him, but it lodges right in his spine, sending shockwaves of pain through his body. Most men would be done for, but not Forrest. He's got this insane willpower, this determination to keep on fighting no matter what. Like me, Tony Montana. So there he is with his bullet digging into his spine. And what does he do? He pushes through the pain, keeps leading his men, and when he sees that Union soldier, he ain't about to let his little thing like a bullet in his spine slow him down. He picks him up, uses him as a human shield, like a badass out of hell. That's the kind of stuff, the cojones you need when you're dealing with that. And that's what the Bedford Forest did at Shiloh. And he said hello to all his little friends as he had a mangled Union soldier by his side.
Is that it?
That's it.
That was good, man. I had to mute myself or I would have just been laughing over you the whole time. That was good. You kind of have like a mixture of like Tony Montana and Michael Corleone and like the Terminator in your impression. I love it.
I like it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it. So I hope our fans liked hearing me host the first podcast or first co-host podcast. Hope you all liked it. So we'll see you next time. Thanks for listening.
Here are your hosts of the Nailing History podcast signing off.
And we say bye-bye.